Welcome to the Ranchonomics podcast, where we empower you to build a better ranch and transform your operations into a thriving business. I'm your host, John Haskell. Let's get started. Tyler, welcome back to the Ranchonomics podcast. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me back.
If you missed last week, this is part 2 of a 2-part series where we were talking about raising chickens. Tyler's from Big Bluff Ranch, Northern California. He gave a little bit of his background last time he was here. He raises how many chickens a year, Tyler?
45,000.
Okay, so he's done this once or twice before, and you've been doing it for how many years?
14-ish, something.
Okay, so he's got some pretty good chicken experience. So last time, we've talked a little about some of the things that make being in the chicken business difficult. And this is something that as a cow person, these are things that kind of are a little intimidating when you talk about chicken numbers. And I hear, ranchers talk regularly about the possibility of adding chickens. And the more I've talked to Tyler, the more I've realized it sounds like a difficult thing. In our first episode, we spent time talking about literally marketing and developing a market for your chickens once you raise them. We also talked about some of the challenges of processing and how to get that done. I'd like to sort of keep going backwards in the production process, if that's all right. Let's talk about getting those chickens to a processing facility. So what all is involved there?
So you've heard the expression, chickens come home to roost. Your chickens always come home to roost. Well, it's absolutely true. I mean, I bet many of you guys have layers and they always come and sleep in the same spot. So you know what I'm talking about. Well, we're using, one step farther back, that although this is kind of the least important part of a chicken enterprise, that the mindset of how to raise chickens is that we are creating an environment for their instincts to work. They have very little intellect, but they have a lot of instincts. So how do we make it so their instincts allow them to stay warm, allow them to stay cool, allow them to eat grass, allow them to chase bugs, allow them to escape predators? So we are creating an environment with our man-made infrastructure to let them survive and thrive. And we're also using their instincts in our favor to manipulate them as we need to. And when we think about catching chickens for harvest, that the chickens come home to roost. I mean, they sleep hard. Man, that sun goes down and they're out. If you ever need to mess with your layers, if you're smart, you're going out after sunset because you can grab them and they don't peck at you like crazy. So we do the same thing. So we harvest our flock size is about 3,000 birds. That's about half a semi-load. That's all our processor would let us bring in one day. It's just like sending cows. The fuller the truck is, the cheaper it is per head, but I'm limited to 3,000. And our processor's 4 hours away. So anyways, we need to be able to catch 3,000 head of chickens on June 21st. So that means we're not dark enough to catch chickens until 10 p.m., maybe even a little later. And that truck needs to be rolling by midnight at the absolute latest. So we need to have our system is set up because that's our constraint. We needed to be good enough to catch 3,000 chickens in less than 2 hours. And so...
Sorry, that's just a crazy... I mean, I've caught plenty of birds at night like that. I totally get that. But the volume you're talking is hysterical to me because it's like, just think of how much time does it take to just actually physically grab the chicken, get her I assume you grab them by the legs, kind of pin their wings down to their body, put them in a box. You got to be fast.
So we've got a crew of Mennonites that come out and help us. So usually we have a crew of 5 to 6 grabbers. I'm usually on the forklift moving. So we put them into these modules. So it's a 4 foot by 8 foot by 5 foot tall cage that has 10 doors in it. Each door holds 30 birds. So what happens is the catchers go in, they grab 5 birds each, and then they politely put them into each one of these doors. And we average about 300 head per man per hour. So with our crew and our system that we've developed over, 10 years, whatever, it's ridiculous that we can catch those 3,000 birds in hour 15, hour 30, somewhere in that range. I think our best was just over an hour for For a while, we were timing ourselves to see how fast we could do it. And then we realized that's actually not the best metric to be tracking because
people get competitive, right?
yeah, we can get pretty competitive and that's not exactly fair to the birds.
Is that seconds per bird? Am I doing the math right? If you're doing 3,000 per man in an hour is 60 minutes.
300 birds per man per hour. So it's 300. So you're basically
300. Yeah. So that'd be 5 birds a minute.
Yeah, that's about right.
So 12 seconds per bird. Yeah, that's the right.
Yeah.
That's getting after it. And you're for how many hours?
We do that for, it's about an hour, hour and a half, hour 15, somewhere in that range. Depends if we're in a rush or not.
Yeah. That's impressive. Okay, good.
It's just a thing. I don't know.
The fun thing about this is, again, every challenge you're talking about with chickens has to do with there are so many.
Right. Or you can do less. Well, you have a trade-off. I chose to go volume because I wanted to do less marketing. If you do more marketing, you can do less volume.
Yeah.
So pick your poison. That's, there are plenty of outfits who do 5,000 to 10,000 chickens a year, but they're on-farm processing, probably doing less. They're probably processing 100 to 500 a day, and then they're charging a lot and they get all of that money.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're selling each one of those things one at a time.
Yeah.
Whereas when I load up that half semi-load of 3,000 birds, they were sold before I bought the chicks.
Yeah.
So then all I have to do is get my money out of the person.
I talk to a lot of people who struggle to fully implement the new wonderful things they learn from continuing education. You take the Ranching for Profit class, you learn about stockmanship, or you take a marketing course, and you come home and you struggle to fully implement what you now know. Often the barrier isn't what you know, it's your own mind. Bud Williams used to tell us to get our mind right constantly. And as easy as that is to say, it's pretty hard to do. We know a lot of the right things, but implementing them requires a new mindset. Fred Provenza describes conquering the distance between your own ears as the longest 6 inches. Sometimes you need to unlearn a few things you think you know. In the Zone Rancher course offered through ranching.fyi, Bob Palmer teaches us how to have an elite level mindset. Bob has spent his career working with Olympic level athletes, the military, and business people, teaching them how to work in the mental zone where they are most effective. We've all experienced the feeling of choking. Conversely, most of us have also experienced fleeting moments of brilliance where we perform at our best. Bob helps prepare us for those high-stress situations where the consequences are dire and the stakes are high. He has developed tools that allow us to consistently perform at our best in the moments when we need it the most. He teaches us how to practice correctly to get our minds right. Life in the zone is better. It's better for your business. It's better for your family. Join the next session of Zone Rancher through www.ranching.fyi and lead yourself and those around you to a whole new level. Okay, so let's go backwards one more step in the process. How do I feed all these birds? Can I go to my local feed mill and ask for a chicken mix and they'll just load me up and off we go? Or do your birds don't graze all grass, right?
Right. So what we do, we're super high attribute. So we're certified organic, we're certified regenerative, we're no corn, no soy, we're air chilled. So basically we check every single box of the highest quality chicken you can do. And so one of the foundational questions that you need to figure out is your feed and your processing. So first of all, who's your customer? Who's going to process? Then who's your feed mill going to be? Because you're going to be buying a lot of feeds. So we go through, for every flock of 3,000 birds, rough numbers here, very rough numbers, we go through 1 semi-load of feed. So 3,000 birds, you're going to be buying 24 tons of feed. And certified organic feed out here in California, you're looking at, let's call it $900 a ton. It's not fun when that feed truck comes rolling down the road.
And you have to write a check for it, yes.
Yeah, because you have to write the check for it. That's the hard part. They want their money now, and then the people don't pay you until they're dead. And anyways, that would be one of the other problems with being wholesale, is that all of your vendors want your money now, and all of your buyers want to pay you a net 30. So when we put a pin on your ranch and we drew a 6-hour circle for a processor, you need to do that exact same circle for your feed mill. You're probably going to have more luck finding a feed mill locally, but you still need to figure that out. Then you need to talk to them. So the first feed mill that we ever worked with was actually a dairy mill that was kind of going out of business. And they're like, we'll do anything. And they were not set up to do chicken feed. They could do the formulation, but they didn't have the pelletizer. They didn't have the crumbler, So any feed mill is probably going to be able to. Oh, actually, I skipped the whole step. I just made an assumption here. Look, if you want to raise chickens and you're going to Tractor Supply or whatever your local place is and you're buying 50 pounds at a time, don't. Start there maybe, but you are paying outrageously high prices and you're getting very low quality feed. So at a minimum scale, you need to be buying a pallet of sacked feed or one of those tote bags, a 2,000 pound tote bag. You can't wrap your mind around being able to reach that level of efficiency. You're not going to really be able to take off. That you really need to be thinking about buying, bulk feed, at least for around here. I think it's the same everywhere, but I'm not sure. That a Stinger truck has 8 compartments that are 3 tons each, and you need to be buying at least 3 tons of bulk feed. That'll get you delivered, but really you're looking at least 12.
Okay.
So 12 tons of feed will probably grow you 1,500 head of birds. Again, super rough numbers, get you in the ballpark.
Yeah. Love it.
That your mill is important. It's probably your first or your largest expense. And your feed does matter. Your grow out on a chicken from hatching to harvest, the industry is going to do it in 5 weeks. If you're good, you'll do it in 6 weeks. If you're bad, you'll do it in 8 weeks. So anyways, they grow quick. You got to have this lined up that you don't have years to figure it out. Like with your steers, they show up. You're like,
clock is running.
Yeah, you can't, they happen so fast. You're not going to be able to build your parachute after you jumped out of the building, right? There's no, there's no base jumping with these guys. It needs to be figured
from
out.
the 3rd floor. There isn't a lot of time.
Exactly. So you need to have all of these ducks in a row, poultry joke, lined up before you get things going.
Okay.
And then another thing about chickens to kind of think in mind, we're talking about feed. Cows, you can almost always say, if I have to, I can look at them tomorrow. I can look at them next week. You turn them out on your BLM, I'll look them at in a month. Obviously, if you're a better guy, you're going to see them more often, but realistically, they can take care of themselves for a pretty long amount of time. Chickens, you have to look at them at least once a day. Twice a day is better. And we have 2 full-time employees, and so we're with them 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
The little things eventually add up. Joel Salton had this analogy, and I'll get the numbers a little bit wrong. You'll understand what I'm saying. I'm going to mess these numbers up. Say a human lives to 70 years old, 7 decades. A chicken lives to 7 weeks. I'm forcing some numbers here, but they're close. So that means every week of a chicken is a decade for a human.
Yep.
So if you crunch the numbers even harder, that every 10 years is 7 days. So every day is a year, right? So then you can crunch it down even harder. So every hour is a month, something like that. So the hour that they're out of water for us is it's an hour, big whoop. I go 4 or 5 hours, whatever. For a chicken, that's the equivalent of a week, right? Can you go without water for a week? So just little tiny things, you cannot let them linger. There is no, I'll deal with it tomorrow. It's deal with it today and now.
Or not, or the problem is solved.
Yeah, or not, exactly. They will solve your problem for you. It's a bad, yeah. Well, I don't know. This is going out on the permanent record, but I do know exactly how many chickens will fit in a front loader bucket, unfortunately. Things happen.
Well, that's the world. The world is hard on small things.
Right.
Small calves, lambs, chickens, rabbits, you're headed down that. Okay, but now speaking of even smaller, let's get back to, are you hatching out a bunch of eggs? Where are all your chickens coming from?
Right. So just thinking back to our discussion about the live markets, part of the reason there are no live markets is that the chicken industry is vertically integrated, that there are really no independent operators.
Right.
So your access to chicks is a little difficult. You can buy chicks, don't get me wrong, Moyers and, there's a bunch of them. Moyers is the first one I can think of. There's Myers, there's Metzer, Metzger's actually pretty cool. They're sort of down the road. Metzger's cool. But the reality is that those are all going to be retail prices that if you want to be a commercial operation, you're going to need to dig deeper and find cheaper chicks, which means that you don't hatch these out yourself. We, to some degree, think of us as a feed yard. We buy in a chick, we buy in feed, we stick the two of them together with some water for a certain amount of time, and then we ship them to a processor and they're done. We are not, but we are essentially a feed yard. That's what we do here. That someone else is the cow calf operation. That means someone else has got the breeder flock, someone else is doing the hatching. The nuances to chicken are so ridiculous when you work at them on scale that one outfit would be very hard pressed to have the breeder flock, hatch them out, raise them out, process them. Like it doesn't happen. Right. So that means you can kind of choose any segment. Like, I have very little experience in it, but there are people out there who just are hatcheries. They're little mom and pop hatcheries that start getting fertile eggs in the spring. They do it in the spring and summer and stop in the fall. They take the winter off and they start all over again. And that is their whole little gig.
And then market to people like you who are buying thousands of them each year.
Yep. It's not to say it's an easy business, but it exists.
Yeah. Okay. The one nice thing there is they're dealing in larger numbers fairly quickly. Their buyers are looking for larger numbers probably, huh?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So another backstep, sidestep. The way we get our chickens is they are shipped to us in the post office. We get them, we go to the back loading dock of the post office, and we're buying enough right now that we have a whole bunch of rolling carts. They come off the mail truck and we just roll them into our trailer and take them away. But the geographic limitations of your processor and your feed mill are not as constrained when you're actually buying chicks. For instance, when we buy our turkeys, we're actually getting them out of a hatchery in West Virginia that for whatever reason, their cost of production is so low that even though we're paying more in shipping, it's still cheaper to buy across the country for us. And the way a chicken works is when they hatch, the leftover yolk leaves them enough nutrients for 36 to 48 hours without food or water. So it works out. So the way we get our chicks, they're hatched Monday morning, they're put in a box in the mail, and we get them Tuesday afternoon, and they're 95% of the time fine. And if they're not fine, it's horrific, but that's life. We have almost the same exact success rate when we ship across the country. They'll ship them Monday and we'll either get them Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday morning, and it's either fine or it's not. Across the country, it's a little more risky, but it still works just fine. So really, when you start looking for chicks, you're going to basically be playing the game of least cost.
Yeah.
Meat birds, they're all basically the same. There are differences. There are absolutely differences. If you raise chickens and you're throwing rotten tomatoes at your phone or your screen, whatever you're watching, yes, there are differences. But no, there are no differences. Don't worry about it. Get whatever Cornish cross is cheapest, and you'll be fine.
For the rest of us, they'll all work, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I love it. Oh, Tyler, this has been great. This is kind of fascinating because, again, just the numbers, and when you think about the process involved with chicken, like you really have to be thinking about how do we do this at a volume that most of us don't even think about. I guess you don't have to think about it that way, but if you're gonna make your living doing that compared to making your living with cattle or sheep, you got to be thinking big. So,
right.
Anything else we should cover before we wrap up? This has been fun.
I don't know. I've been trying to present this in the harshest light possible because so many people get into this thinking that it is easy, and that growing the birds is actually easy. Too easy, in fact, seductively easy. And too many people ignore all this other stuff that we spent, almost an hour at this point talking about.
Yeah.
But the other stuff is by far the most important things. You need to look at your location, your geography, your market, your access to customers, your access to processing. And you really need to, foundationally, you need to figure out what this enterprise is going to do for you. How can it internally work? How is it going to fit into the rest of your operation, that it's going to have a much different production pace to it, production cycle to it?
Yeah.
How does that fit into your existing operation? How does it fit into your quality of life? It can work. I mean, we're doing it. We're doing 45,000 a year. We're going to keep doing it, but it was not easy getting to here. And if I can help anyone miss the years years of mistakes and hundreds of thousands of dollars and dead chickens. If I can help you skip any of that, I would feel pretty happy about it.
Well, that is very nice of you. I appreciate that. All right, sounds good. The other thing, Tyler is the moderator on the direct-to-consumer ranching.fyi forum. So if you would like to harass him there, ask questions, see any of his upcoming webinars there, that would be great. Tyler, Big Bluff Ranch is bigbluffranch.com. Is that correct?
Yep, we're simple.
Good. I believe you've had pretty good demand for what you're doing, but you are potentially looking for direct-to-consumer retailers who would like to buy chickens and resell them.
Yep. And turkeys. Turkeys are the big one right now. But yeah, if you are smart enough to sell direct to consumer and also smart enough not to raise these stupid little two-legged creatures, I am dumb enough to raise them. So we can figure something out.
Could make the perfect partnership. Huh?
Exactly.
What's that saying about marriage? Sometimes requires enough ignorance and enough knowledge and enough ignorance to make it work.
Perfect. I'll bring the ignorance.
Sounds good. Tyler, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun. And for the rest of you, thank you all for listening to the Ranchonomics podcast. Look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you for tuning into the Ranchonomics podcast. We hope this episode helped you win today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend.